On May 11, 1960, at 8 in the evening in Buenos Aires, a man got off the bus. He was on his way home from work. It was already dark outside. He turned on a flashlight and walked to his house. In Spanish, he was addressed, "Un momentito, señor." The man turned, and at the same moment he was grabbed, put into a car, gagged, put on sunglasses and a hood, and driven away to an unknown destination. It took just over 20 seconds to capture the man. For about a week, the man was kept in a villa rented by the scouts in the suburbs of Buenos Aires. On the evening of May 20th, the man was injected with potent substances and taken from Argentina to Israel under false documents and under the pretext of a necessary urgent operation in Israel. On May 22nd, the government of Israel announced that Adolf Eichmann, the German executioner, one of the organizers and perpetrators of the Holocaust, who had been in hiding from justice for many years, had been brought to their country. This is the first time the word Mossad has appeared on the international scene. The intelligence of this small state was one of the main intelligence agencies of the world. Today we will talk about the most outstanding Mossad special operations and declassify the people who carried them out. Special Operation Sword of Damocles. In 1962, Israeli intelligence learned of German plans to develop chemical and radioactive missiles for Egypt. Several secret military facilities were built in Egypt, the main one being Factory 333 in the desert, where German specialists worked. They developed the Al-Zafar and Al-Kahir missiles with ranges of 250, 450 kilometers and conducted 4 successful tests. Israel decided to withdraw key figures from the project: Eugen Sanger, Wolfgang Pilz, Paul Gerke, and Heinz Krug, as well as engineers working in the missile program. In late August 1962, Israeli intelligence kidnapped one of Heinz Krug's supervisors in Munich. The Mossad forced Krug to cooperate, and he revealed information about Egypt's missile program. Intelligence obtained the whereabouts of the engineers and eliminated them using envelopes of explosives. The next target was the leader Wolfgang Pilz. The Israelis also sent him an envelope, but he survived. Egyptian counterintelligence then prevented further assassination attempts using similar letters. After a series of unsuccessful assassination attempts, the Mossad changed tactics, and Israeli intelligence focused on collecting classified material about the Egyptian project from European offices. Between 1964 and 1966, about 30,000 documents were extracted. Israeli intelligence managed to recruit German saboteur and former SS Obersturmbannführer Otto Skorzeny. Skorzeny informed his friends in Egypt that he was reviving a community of SS and Wehrmacht veterans to create the Fourth Reich. Meetings with friends in Madrid on behalf of the Mossad provided evidence of German scientists' involvement in the missile project in Egypt, and this information was passed on to the German authorities. As a result, the project was destroyed from within, and the German scientists left Egypt, returning to Europe. Operation Penicillin, also known as Operation Diamond or Operation Bluebird, was carried out in August 1966 by the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad. The purpose of the operation was to hijack a Soviet MiG-21 fighter jet, which was then a modern and secret model and was in service with Arab countries such as Syria, Egypt, and Iraq. The story of the operation began when the commander of the Israeli Air Force, General Ezer Weitzman, asked Mossad Chief Meir Amit to organize the hijacking of the MiG-21, as military conflicts were inevitable. Mossad decided to bet on a non-Muslim pilot. They managed to contact an Iraqi pilot, Munir Redfa, who was of Jewish origin. Munir Redfa agreed to hijack a MiG-21 and demanded in exchange for his help that his family be taken out of Iraq. Israel agreed and devised a plan for the hijacking. The hijacking took place on August 15th. During a training flight, the pilot changed course, turned off the radio, which gave orders to go back, and directed the plane toward the Jordanian border, leading it in a zigzag course laid out by the Mossad. As he approached the Jordan-Israel border, Redfa saw 2 Israeli fighter jets flying toward him. The planes exchanged signals, and the MiG-21, escorted by the Israelis, headed for a military airfield in the Negev desert. After successfully hijacking a MiG-21 to Israel, Redfa was given 500,000 British pounds and Israeli citizenship. His family was successfully smuggled out of Iraq via Iran. The MiG-21 aircraft was flight tested in Israel and then shipped to the United States for further research at Area 51. Special Operation The Wrath of God. The Mossad, an Israeli intelligence operation to eliminate terrorists, is linked to events at the Munich Olympics in 1972. During that Olympics, Palestinian terrorists from the Black September organization took Israeli athletes hostage. After a failed hostage rescue attempt that ended tragically, many Israelis were killed. In response to these events, Israel launched an active operation to eliminate members of Black September and other Palestinian terrorists who were linked to the Olympic attacks. The operation was known as Operation Wrath of God. It began in the fall of 1972 and lasted for over 2 decades. The first of the alleged masterminds of the attack, Abdel Wael Zweiter, was shot and killed by 2 unknown agents on the doorstep of his home on October 16, 1972. Mahmoud al-Hamshari, the coordinator of the Munich Olympics terrorist attack, died in hospital after being critically wounded by a bomb hidden in his home phone. Hussein Abd al-Shir, killed by a bomb hidden in the bed of his hotel room. Basil al-Kubaishi was shot dead by 2 unidentified agents in the street. Mohammed Youssef al-Najjar, shot dead during a special operation called Spring of Youth. Zayad Muhasi, killed in his hotel room. 8 miniature incendiary bombs were planted in the room, which, when detonated in a confined space, instantly burned up all oxygen. Mohammed Boudia, killed by a bomb planted in his car. Ali Hassan Salameh died in hospital after being seriously injured in a nearby car bomb explosion in Beirut. Atef Basaiso, shot at point-blank range, became the last target of the operation. By June 1973, 13 of the 17 people on the Mossad list had been killed. Abu Ayyad, leader of the Black September organization, was assassinated by his associates in 1991. Special Operation Isotope. The 1972 hijacking of the airplane was the first Black September action against Israel and the first attack on a foreign airplane in Israel. The operation was planned by Ali Hassan Salameh, and the group was led by Ali Taha Abu Sneina. They targeted a Belgian Sabena Boeing 707 on a Brussels-Vienna Tel Aviv flight. The 4 terrorists infiltrated the flight with false passports. After leaving Vienna, 2 of them broke into the cabin with weapons and explosives. The terrorists demanded the release of 315 Palestinians, threatening to blow up the plane and passengers if the demand was not met by 9 a.m. the next morning. Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Dayan ordered negotiations with the kidnappers, and at the same time, Operation Isotope was being prepared to rescue the hostages. Sayeret Matkal fighters trained for the assault on another Boeing 707 in a hangar at the airfield. On the morning of May 9th, the hijackers demanded provisions and fuel, which they used as an opportunity for a safe assault. Under the pretext of maintenance, a group of 16 Sayeret Matkal fighters approached the plane, dressed in white aviation technician coveralls, with weapons concealed under their clothing. They were accompanied by a Red Cross representative, unaware of the impending assault, and future Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Within 90 seconds, the special forces took possession of the plane, disarming the terrorists' grenades and explosive devices. During the assault, 2 female terrorists were captured, 2 terrorists were killed, and 3 passengers were wounded. The operation went down in history as the first successful release of an airplane with hostages taken by terrorists. The terrorist leader, Ali Taha Abu Sneina, was shot dead in a restroom at the start of the assault. Special Operation Entebbe. On June 27, 1976, PFLP and Revolutionary Cell militants hijacked an Air France Airbus on a Tel Aviv-Athens-Paris flight and forced it to land at Entebbe Airport, Uganda. The terrorists separated the hostages by nationality and passports, releasing non-Israeli and non-Jewish hostages. The remaining 105 Israeli hostages were threatened with death. The terrorists demanded the release of 53 Palestinians serving prison sentences in Israel. On June 4th, 4 Hercules planes landed at Entebbe airport and dropped off about 100 Israeli commandos. A convoy of Land Rover Jeeps with a black Mercedes in front, similar to the one driven by Ugandan dictator Idi Amin, left the planes. This helped to mislead the guards, disarm the checkpoints, and approach the terminal where the hostages were. The stormtroopers jumped out of their vehicles and rushed to the terminal where the hostages were being held. Israeli commandos entered the terminal, killed the terrorists, and freed the hostages. The hostages then began boarding Israeli planes, but they were fired upon by Ugandan soldiers. The 102 rescued hostages flew to Israel via Nairobi. 7 of the 10 terrorists were killed, and 45 Ugandan army personnel were also killed in the firefight. After the hostages were released, a special Air Force unit destroyed 8 Ugandan MiG-17 fighter planes and a radar tower at the airfield for fear of possible pursuit. Special Operation Spring of Youth. The main objective of Spring of Youth was to eliminate high-ranking members of the Fatah and PFLP movements in Beirut, responsible for terrorist attacks in the 1960s and 1970s. In January 1973, an operative posing as a journalist conducted reconnaissance and photographic surveys of the target neighborhoods in Beirut. This allowed the operatives to know every detail down to what time the lights went out in the target's apartments. There were 5 main targets: Aviva, clearing 2 guarded buildings; Gila, blowing up a building with PFLP fighters; Kila, clearing a factory under Fatah control; Warda, clearing Fatah buildings and headquarters; Yehudit, clearing an arms repair shop. Operation Aviva. Capture or kill 3 PLO leaders living in 2 7-story buildings on Wardan Street. 14 Sayeret Matkal fighters arrived at the site in 3 vehicles, 2 of which were disguised in women's dresses and the others posing as young men accompanying their ladies. In a romantic disguise, the fighters approached the buildings and slipped inside. They shot the terrorists, took the documents, and began their retreat. The whole operation took 12 minutes. The second most important target of the operation was a 7-story building on Khartoum Street, inhabited by Popular Front militants. Special forces under the command of future Chief of General Staff Amnon Lipkin Shahak drove up to the building with 120 kilograms of explosives in Mercedes. They encountered resistance, but despite the firefight, the fighters managed to capture the bottom floor of the building, booby-trapped the base, and blew it up with all the militants as they retreated. The destruction of the rest of the targets was successful and without complications. The next morning, the participants of the operation returned by boat to the Haifa port, special forces and scouts. The latter, leaving Beirut, carefully parked their rented cars on the shore, leaving the keys inside. Special Operation Opera. In 1975, Iraq and France concluded a nuclear energy cooperation treaty, and in 1976, a contract was signed to supply Iraq with a French low-power research nuclear reactor. In effect, this gave Iraq the ability to produce nuclear weapons. In 1979, 2 reactors destined for shipment to Iraq were destroyed by Mossad agents in a sabotage at the port of La Sainte-sur-Mer in France near Toulon. A year later, France supplied Iraq with a new reactor, and Israel worried that it might be used to make nuclear weapons. Attempts to persuade France to stop helping Iraq with nuclear modernization were unsuccessful. In October 1980, the Israeli cabinet approved a plan for Operation Opera, which involved an airstrike on Iraq's nuclear center. Mossad intelligence indicated that the reactor was designed to produce plutonium, and the operation had to be carried out by the summer of 1981 before the reactor could be filled with nuclear fuel. On June 7, 1981, a group of Israeli fighter bombers and cover fighters unauthorized entered Jordanian and Saudi Arabian airspace and struck an Iraqi reactor, dropping 16 bombs on it. Iraqi air defenses failed to react in time, and fire was only opened when the attacking aircraft were returning. No Israeli aircraft were shot down, and the damaged nuclear complex was deemed unrecoverable. At the moment, the Mossad's budget is estimated by various sources to be around 10 billion shekels, which is comparable to the budget of the CIA. The number of Mossad employees is estimated at 6,000, 7,000. Until the 1960s, mention of the Mossad was forbidden in official and unofficial sources, and the name of the head of the Mossad was kept secret until the late 1990s. Currently, the Mossad has its own official website and museum. The Mossad reports directly to the Prime Minister and is not legally regulated. These agents, similar to James Bond, have a license to kill and operate around the world.